Welcome to the Tejas region, a region that is based on the state of Texas, where you'll find deserts, sprawling plains, bustling cities, and a variety of unique monsters waiting to be discovered. And in this video, I'm going to go over the starter monsters for my Pokemon-inspired region. Let's do this! First up, we have the grass-type starter Pokemon, Cactillo, who is based on the Texas state animal, the armadillo. And just the other day, I almost ran over an armadillo driving in my neighborhood, so these guys quite literally live everywhere around here. And Cactillo is known as the cactus Pokemon because it's also based on the prickly pear cactus, which happens to be the state plant of Texas, and can also be found everywhere in Texas as well. And these plants are known to grow prickly pears, which throughout Texas history has been a staple in the diet and food of Texas people for centuries. And as you can see, Cactillo has one growing on his behind. But in the Tejas region, this would be called a tomato berry, which Tejan people use quite frequently to make spicy dishes with. Cactillo is also based on a cannonball, because in this video, each starter Pokemon has an overarching theme, with each one of them representing an era of Texas history. And so for the Cactillo line, they represent the 19th century, during the time of the Texas Revolution, for when we gained our independence from Mexico and became our own country, all before joining the United States. And I'll explain why a cannonball represents this era later on. So basically we have a cactus armadillo that's able to be launched like a cannonball, and grow delicious berries from his behind that may have some poop on them, and I love it. Moving on to his moveset, I think we have the moves Tackle, Withdraw, Spike Cannon, and Leafage, which are all your basic starter Pokemon moves. And honestly, the move Spike Cannon is just perfect for this living cactus armadillo Pokemon thing, so watch out and don't shake a stick at it. For its ability, it will have the common grass-type starter ability, Overgrow, which powers grass-type moves in a pinch. But for its hidden ability, it will have Filter, which powers down super effective moves, since this Pokemon later becomes weak to the other two starter Pokemon lines. So we thought this would balance it out, and as well as making it the defensive starter Pokemon of the bunch, which will make more sense later on. Oh, and by the way, every stage will have the same abilities. And lastly, for the lore of this Pokemon, is Pokemon Century would state this. Professors often look for lost Cactillo that are misfired by Almadillo. They grow tomato berries that are used for spicy recipes, which I kind of spoiled earlier. But yeah, this is Cactillo, the grass-type starter Pokemon for the Tejas region. Now let's move on to its evolution. Next we have Barradillo, the keg Pokemon. And this armadillo Pokemon is based on a barrel cactus, which is often found in the southern parts of the United States and Mexico, especially in Texas. And as you can see, barrel cacti often grow pretty flowers on the top of their buds, just like Barradillo has with its little green flowers sprouting on its head, like a middle stage Pokemon should. And if you notice, Barradillo has a worried expression on his face, and that's because it's also based on a keg of gunpowder. Because during the Battle of the Alamo, gunpowder played a crucial role of giving firepower to the cannons for the Texan defenders. So basically at any moment, Barradillo could just explode if the chemicals within his body destabilize. So it's a pretty anxious and stressed out Pokemon. And I heard through the grapevine that the people of the Tejas region often complain about them Barradillo running amok, because they're always destroying their crops with their random explosions. So the Tejan people don't really like this Pokemon. But don't worry, Barradillo, I like you. Give me a hug. Along with that, we thought it'd be fun for it to weigh 13 pounds, since the Battle of the Alamo lasted 13 days. And the artist of these Pokemon, Mommez, added a fun detail of giving Barradillo a bandana-like design on its neck. So it kinda has that bandit feel, like an old Texan outlaw that is wanted by the local sheriff for the crimes of exploding a farmer's crops, which I really love. And lastly, it has a little horn growing on his forehead that will become something epic in its final stage, but you will see that in a little bit. So we have a cactus armadillo that is a living bomb, constantly stressed the heck out that is gonna explode, and also do be running amok on those farmers' crops. If I had a nickel for every time one of them Barradillos wrecked my crops, I'd be richer than a cowboy at a rodeo. Yeehaw! Okay, I'll stop. Moving on to his moveset, I think would of course have the moves Explosion and Seed Bomb, because it is a living bomb over here, and Spiky Shield and Body Slam, which are all pretty self-explanatory. And lastly, for the lore of this Pokemon, is Pokemon Century would state this. Barradillo is constantly stressed out due to it being a living bomb. Any kind of disturbance to the chemicals inside his body causes it to explode. So yeah, there's Barradillo, and I absolutely love this Pokemon. My friend and I had an awesome time making this one for this video. But now it's time for the final evolution for the Tejan Grass-type starter Pokemon. So let's continue. And lastly, for the final stage of the Cactillo line, we have Almadillo, the Grass and Steel-type cannon Pokemon, who is based on the cannons of the Texas Revolution. And even if you're not familiar with Texas history, you've probably seen the Come and Take It flag, a flag with a cannon on it that became iconic during the Battle of Gonzales during the Texas Revolution. And the reason why this cannon became so iconic is because the Mexican dictator, Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna, gave a small cannon to the settlers of Gonzales, so that they could protect themselves from Native American attacks. But after Santa Anna abolished the Mexican Constitution, stripping the Texas settlers of their autonomy and rights, tensions grew and the settlers eventually demanded their independence from Mexico. And of course, Santa Anna wanted his cannon back. But do you know what the Texans said in retaliation? Come and take it, making this cannon the battle cry of the Texas Revolution. Additionally, Almadillo is also based on a saguaro cactus, which are those cacti that you probably think of when imagining Texas, which is where the cannon's design comes from. And yeah, overall, I absolutely love this design. Mama's adding that metallic skull on the top of his head really gives it that Texan flavor. And I'm also a big fan of King K. Rool's, so the metallic belly could definitely add some character to this Pokemon. Oh, and I also like how he's wearing padded spikes on his hands. Kind of looks like a hockey goalie, which is surprisingly a very popular sport here in Texas as well. But yeah, this is one of my favorite designs in this video. Alright, moving on to his moveset, I think we have the moves Needle Arm, Iron Head, Flash Cannon, and his signature move, Take Charge, which is based on the Come and Take It battle cry of the Texas Defenders. And this move boosts the user's attack, defense, and special defense by 1 stage, where it's essentially taking charge of the battlefield, since this is the defensive starter Pokemon of the bunch. And as for the lore of this Pokemon, its Pokédex entry would state this: Almadillo's flowers bloom only in times of great conflict. The last time someone laid eyes upon his flower was during the Battle of Gonza, which in the Tejas region was the first city to establish itself. And I think the tomato berry on his tail would bloom into this rare war flower. So yeah, we have Cactillo the Cannonball, Barradillo the Gunpowder, Run the Muck, and Almadillo the Cannon, and I absolutely love them. But now it's time for the Fire-type starters. Next up, we have the Fire-type starter Pokemon, Scalebito, who is based on the Texas state reptile, the Horned Lizard, or as we call it here in Texas, the Horny Toad, which is why Scalebito is known as the Horny Pokemon, and as the Pokemon as Super Asombroso. Along with that, it is also based on a Mexican alebrije sculpture, which are brightly colored Mexican folk art of fantastical creatures, usually combining a real animal with a mythical one to create something new, which I thought would be a great concept for the Tejas Fire-type starter Pokemon, since Texas culture shares a lot of Mexican culture as well. And for the first time in my life, I went to San Antonio last year and saw a ton of Mexican culture, especially alebrije sculptures, and I almost bought one for myself. I kinda regret not getting one now. And these sculptures can range from chickens to bulls to lizards to monkeys to even elephants. These pieces of artwork have a large variety. And with the twist of alebrije sculptures being based on real life and fantastical creatures, means that Scalebito will evolve into something pretty mythical. But you'll see that later on in this video. Additionally, Scalebito is also based on the 18th century of Texas, continuing on the overarching theme of the different eras. And this era was during the time when Spain colonized Texas, spreading their culture, religion, languages, and customs to all the people they could find. Which is why the Scalebito line has a lot of Mexican culture and inspiration behind it, as you'll see with each of his stages. Alright, moving on to his moveset, I think we have the moves Horn Attack, since it is a Horny Toad, Ember, Scratch, and Leer, which are all pretty self-explanatory. For their ability, they'll have the average Fire-type starter ability, Blaze, which powers up Fire-type moves in a pinch, but they'll also have the Super Luck hidden ability, which boosts critical hit ratios of their moves. And the Super Luck ability ties into the rarity of this Pokemon, because in its lore, it is a highly collectible Pokemon due to its vibrant colors. And Mama's came up with the cool idea of having his dark spots light up when he uses Fire-type attacks. Here's what that would look like, and it's very cute. And as for the lore of this Pokemon, its Pokédex entry would state this: Scalebito's vibrant patterns not only serve as a form of camouflage in flora environments, but are also believed to bring good luck to his trainer. Its artistic design has made it a beloved Pokemon among artisans and collectors. And yeah, there's Scalebito, the Fire-type starter Pokemon of the Tejas region. And I'm really excited to show y'all his fantastical, mythical final evolution. But first, let's move on to his second stage. Next, we have Inciñerata, the Fire Dragon-type Piñata Pokemon. And yes, the N has an accent on it because it's cool. And this Pokemon is based on, well, a piñata, which is heavily associated with Mexican culture. And we thought basing it on a piñata would be perfect for the second stage, because originally alebrije sculptures were made out of paper mache, the same material used for piñatas. And as you can see, its reptile scales kind of have that paper mache texture to them, which works really well with it being a reptile dragon piñata Pokemon. Another reason why we chose to base it on a piñata is because they drop candy, which is to the inspiration for his final stage, but I won't spoil that just yet. But look, candy corn horns, they're so cute. And as you can tell by his dragon typing, it is starting to shape into its mythical origins. With this, alebrije's inspired Pokemon taking the shape of a horned lizard fused with a mythical dragon, which I think fits very well with this lore and Pokemon lore in general, since dragon-type Pokemon are known to be mythical Pokemon, at least in Generation 1. So basically, Inciñerata is a very still cocoon-like Pokemon, waiting to hatch into its fantastical form, just like Pupitar and Shelgon. but it is a very boring life as an Inciñerata, as you can tell by his expression, since all it can really do is just float around being a stiff piñata, hoping that no one comes and whacks it, taking his candy corn horns. Even though I'm not very sure if they'd be tasty, but you know, for the lore of the Pokemon, let's say they are, and they are used for tasty sweet dishes. That sounds delicious. I actually love candy corn candy, so I probably should stay away from Inciñerata before I eat it. Moving on to his moveset, I think we have the moves Flame Burst because all it can really do is just burst a fire out of his body, Harden because it's a cocoon piñata, Mega Horn due to it being a horny toad and it's a horny Pokemon, and Smog, which I imagine being the hot air inside his body that allows it to float. And as for the lore of this Pokemon, its Pokédex history would state this. Inciñerata has cocooned into a paper-like shell. It moves around by floating from the hot air within its body, similar to a hot air balloon. And there you go, that is Inciñerata, the piñata Pokemon. But now it's time for the epic reveal, so let's continue. And finally, for the final stage of the Scalebito and Inciñerata line, we have Caladrake, the Fire Dragon type Sugar Skull Pokemon, who is based on a calavera, the Spanish word for skull in the context of the Day of the Dead. And since the Scalebito line are based on the Spanish missions of 1718, where they aim to spread their culture, religion, and more, we thought Dia de los Muertos was one of the biggest days that represents Mexican culture. Since this is the day where Mexican people honor their deceased loved ones with vibrant colors, marigolds, sugar skulls, and traditional Mexican food, which I think Caladrake represents well. Because it has vibrant colors, being based on an alebrije sculpture. It features marigold flower coloring on its upper half. It has elements of a sugar skull with its giant decorative head, and let's say its horns are still sought after for making delicious delicacies. But good luck getting them because this is a ferocious sugar skull dragon that's trying to eat you too. Well, only if you're attacking it, because otherwise it's a pretty friendly Pokemon. Also, this might sound random, but I wanted Caladrake to have some elements of a Chinese festival dragon, because if you didn't know, piñatas are believed to have originated from China, where they were used to celebrate the Chinese New Year by breaking animal paper mache figures filled with seeds to bring good luck for the year's harvest. So I thought it'd be unique for this Texas starter Pokemon to have some Chinese roots as well, since its pre-evolution is completely based on the supposed Chinese invention, and not to mention that it is a dragon, so it makes sense. And overall, this is probably my favorite starter Pokemon design of the entire bunch, because going into this, I really wanted to have my quote-unquote Charizard of my region, a Pokemon that just looks so iconic and is sought after by everyone. And it may look goofy, but I think it's a really cool kind of goofy, and I absolutely love it, especially its horns. They're just so shiny. And yes, it is still a horny toad, but now a dragon as well. Moving on to his moveset, I think we have the moves Dragon Rush, which we base on a Sugar Rush, Horn Drill because it is still a horny toad, Flare Blitz, and its signature move Draconic Crash, where the user crashes into the opponent with explosive energy, but makes the user lethargic, lowering the defense by 2 stages, similar to a Sugar Crash. And lastly, for the lore of this Pokemon, its Pokédex history would state this. Caladrake's presence is a sign of good fortune. It is believed that its appearance during celebrations ensures the well-being and prosperity of those who honor their ancestors. And there you go, the Charizard of my region, that is Caladrake, who is actually a Dragon-type Pokemon. I love it, and I hope y'all do too. And now it's time for the Water-type starter Pokemon, so let's continue. And for the final starter Pokemon of this video, we have Oilpup, the water poison type oil Pokemon, who is based on the blue Lacy Dog, the Texas State canine. And we thought the blue Lacy Dog would be a great choice for the water type starter Pokemon, because well, it's blue, and it was quite literally invented here in Texas by the Lacy brothers, where they bred a farmer's dog by crossbreeding an English Shepherd, a Greyhound, and possibly a Coyote or Wolf. So this is a true Texan dog. Additionally, Oilpup is of course based on oil, since here in Texas, the oil industry is huge. Because believe it or not, Texas is by far the largest oil producer in the United States, and it accounts for a significant portion of the country's total production. So we had to base one of the starter Pokemon on oil, since a big part of our economy over here revolves around it, which is how Oilpup came to be. And continuing on the overarching theme of the different areas of Texas, the Oilpup line is based on the 20th century, during the time when oil drillers discovered the oil gold mine, Spindletop, an oil field that quite literally marked the beginning of the Texas oil boom, producing around 100,000 barrels of oil per day, which created oil boom towns and led to the birth of oil companies like Texaco and Gulf Oil, which we incorporated in its final stage. So we have a blue Lacy Dog Pokemon that produces oil, which is why it's a water poison type Pokemon, and remains this way all throughout its stages. And I think it's a fun concept because water and oil don't mix, as you can see with its design. And I'm just gonna say right now, its final stage does not become a furry bipedal. It stays on all fours. I'm looking at you, inboard Delphox, Incineroar, Cinderace, and Meowscarda. Alright, moving on to his moveset, I think we have the moves Water Gun, Pound, Sludge, and Tail Whip, which are all pretty self-explanatory. And lastly, for the lore of this Pokemon, its Pokédex history would state this. In the early years of the Tejas region, households relied on Oilpup's unique oil to fuel their lamps, providing light through the long nights. This made Oilpup not just a viable resource, but a cherished companion in every home, which is a reference to the fact that nearly half of all Texans own a dog. It's pretty hard to find someone who doesn't that lives here. And there you go, that is Oilpup, the water-type starter Pokemon. So, in the Tejas region, we have a cactus armadillo, an alebrije sculpture horned lizard, and an oily blue lacy dog. Don't they look so cute together? I love them. But now let's move on to Oilpup's evolution. Next we have Spillound, who is based on oil drilling in the sea. Because during the 20th century, the first ever offshore oil drilling happened in the Gulf of Mexico. And this quite literally revolutionized oil drilling across the globe, because it enabled oil companies to drill in the deep waters of the ocean, making the Gulf of Mexico yet another oil gold mine. Additionally, Spillound is of course based on an oil spill, hence its name, because during the 21st century, a giant oil spill happened in the Gulf of Mexico as well. And this was said to be the largest environmental disaster in the petroleum industry. So we took elements of that and added them to Spillound too. And as you can see, Spillound is quite the messy Pokemon. It has oil dripping from its heads, ears, and even its tail. And yes, its tail can be used as a hand to grab things with, which I thought was a fun idea made by the artists. And if you're wondering why it's wearing a life jacket, it's because it's based on the pontoons that offshore oil drilling units use to float in the sea, as well as being inspired by a lifeguard dog, since the final stage becomes more of a heroic Pokemon, which you'll see later on. Moving on to his moveset, I think we have the moves Muddy Water, Acid Armor, Sludge Wave, and Lick, which are all pretty self-explanatory. And as for the lore of this Pokemon, its Pokédex entry would state this: Spillound can control its constant oil leakage, leaving a trail of oily puddles that causes everything around it to decay. Despite the mess it creates, Tejas still adores playful nature and loyalty, always ready to clean up after their beloved messy companion. And yeah, there you go, that is Spillound, a pretty straightforward Pokemon. And now it's time to see the final stage of this oily puppy line. So let's continue. And lastly, for the final starter Pokemon to showcase in this video, we have Geyserhound, the final stage of the Oilpup line. And Geyserhound is based on several things. For one, it is based on the Spindletop Oil Geyser, the oil field that marked the beginning of the Texas oil boom. For two, it is based on the Texaco gas station, which is why it's a Star State symbol on its chest, similar to the Texaco logo and the Texas state flag. For three, it is based on an oil boomtown, which were towns that economically grew due to the oil fields around them, which will become more apparent in the lore of this Pokemon. And lastly, it is based on a water jetpack, which the oil derrick looking jets on his back are based on. And yes, this Pokemon can quite literally fly with these things, making it a very heroic Pokemon. And overall, it's an awesome design. Momus really captured the Superman vibe we were looking for this Pokemon, since it does have heroic lore in the Tejas region. And also, my friend and I had a very tough time incorporating the oil derricks to this Pokemon's design, and I think Momus did an amazing job making the jetpacks look similar to these giant oil drillers. I also love the pontoons attached to his legs, and the water goggles that are removable. It definitely gives it that superhero costume feel. I can definitely imagine this Pokemon flying around the Tejas region saving people from crimes and villains and such. Maybe we should make a villain Pokemon in this region too, as his arch nemesis. Let me know in the comments what you think that Pokemon should be based on. Alright, moving on to his moveset, I think we have the moves Water Spout, since oil geysers spout from the ground, Drill Run, which is based on the action of oil drilling, Fly because he can literally fly with his jetpacks and it's a superhero, and his signature move, Oozing Jet, where the user shoots an oily geyser at the opponent, dealing 90 base damage and lowering their defense and special defense for 3 turns, since this is the tech Pokemon of the bunch. Which means we have Almadillo as the defensive Pokemon, Caladrake as the offensive Pokemon, and Geyserhound as the tech Pokemon. And lastly, for the lore of this Pokemon, its Pokédex entry would state this: due to Geyserhound's pivotal role in the development and financial boom of Gearston City, a statue was erected in his honor in the city square. It is widely recognized as a hero. And Gearston is a city in the Tejas region that is based on Houston, since Houston is often called the energy capital of the world, due to how much oil production goes on there, and the fact that several of the world's largest oil companies are based there, like ExxonMobil and Shell. But yeah, there you go, that is Geyserhound, the final evolution of the Oilpup line. I hope you guys like it. And hey, if you enjoyed this video and want to see more of the Tejas region, let me know down below in the comments, and leave a like and subscribe and ring the bell and just do everything that you can think of. Also, watch this video right here. What if there was a 4-starter Pokemon? It's really interesting.